We are live-ish. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another coaching call with Nido Marketing. I am Deneen. I'm the Montessori growth strategist here at Nido Marketing, and I have two wonderful guests here to speak about building a professional development plan for your staff. And, this is our first call in 2020, and we know many of you administrators are thinking about, planning for the next school year. And one of those things is making sure that your staff is prepared and your classrooms are prepared with qualified staff. And so we've got Tammy Oesting here and also Seemi Abdullah. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Deneen. Thanks so much for having us.
Absolutely. So both of you have 20 plus years of experience, in the Montessori world, but many different roles that you've held, right? Seemi, you've been a school owner, a guide, an administrator. Tammy, you've been a speaker, a consultant, a teacher, all of it. So both of you come with such a wealth of knowledge, and we're so grateful that you're speaking on this particular topic because it's a really important one.
Thank you for having us, Deneen. We're so excited to be here.
Absolutely. Awesome. So without further ado, we're going to head right into this. And both Tammy and Seemi are entrepreneurs in the Montessori world. Tammy, you own ClassrooMechanics, which is a professional development company, and you offer a bunch of assets to schools and to teachers and guides and assistants all over the world, really, right?
Yes. We have an online assistant training program that is on 6 continents. Woo! Changing schools everywhere. And I also do live training and presentations around the world.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Seemi, you own TrilliumMontessori.org, and it's this ever beautiful, evolving platform where people can really get resources, Montessori professionals and parents as well, really developing their practice, right?
Yeah, so it actually started off as a blog, which I created for SEO purposes for my school back in the day. So Nido Marketing folks will understand.
Right? Marketing people
what that
love
means.
that.
But then, so it started as a place for me to just share what we were doing in the classroom, and then it evolved into more resources for teachers. So now we have some curriculum downloads and online professional development with a variety of guest speakers as well. So it's been really fun.
Perfect. And both of you come with such a passion for developing Montessori professionals, right? Because this job isn't easy, and it's not for everyone, right? It takes a lot of patience with yourself, with your environment, with the people you work with. And also, I'm sure both of you are aware, like this is a lifelong journey, right? You've had 20 plus years of experience, but I'm sure you're probably, meeting so many new people and different people at different times in their journey that this is really a process regardless of how much experience you have.
Absolutely. I think that this is an evolution, that we're learning to adapt constantly as school leaders. You don't know what's coming your way every day. Right. And so having a plan and preparing and having that flexibility and letting things unfold a little bit and leaning in to that unfolding, it's pretty constant, the growth. For me, that's really appealing. I thrive on lifelong learning. And I think that this is an amazing field to be in, and with people that can support you in that evolution. It's a beautiful thing. We're so lucky.
I agree. And I just wanted to add to that I'm quite an introvert, but even with that, it's the community that it's a lifelong journey, and you can't really do it by yourself, I think. Get to your fullest potential. You need the rest of the Montessori people to do it with you. So I really want to appreciate the school leaders who create those communities in their schools, but also the fact that the internet now makes it so possible for us to expand our circles and connect with each other in this way. And thank you, Deneen, for facilitating something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And the both of you are using the internet well for those resources. So we're super excited. I know you both have a presentation ready for us. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Tammy, if you want to share your screen.
Yeah, sure. Let me go ahead and do so. There we go. So here we are, and we're just so happy to be here with Nido Marketing. This is wonderful. And talking about professional development plan is, I think, this is so timely, because here we are in a field where the learning has to be happening both on every level for every person in the organization. So the goal of this time together today is hopefully to provide you with some inspiration as well as some tools to empower professional growth within your organization, that you will be able to plan. This is the planning piece. It's not the tracking piece, although we'll touch on that. It's not like how it unfolds through your year, but how do you plan? Who do we plan? Where? What are the resources? So those are the big goals that we have. And I always like to try to reflect a little bit. Well, let's talk a little bit about some goals too. So some inspiration, some resources. We really want to create a pathway for you to be able to start thinking now and start planning for the plan, if you will. There is a sense of cohesion in a community that has a dedication to professional growth. And that's partly one of the goals that we have, is how do we retain our staff? How do we create a community that's high functioning and has the sensibility that we're on this path together? So here's my analogy, and Seemi's heard this 100 times from me, but I want you to just reflect a little bit about your own path and how you got to where you are. And I think of our Montessori training as really like baking a cake, that you bake the cake by organizing all your ingredients and looking at the recipe and seeing all these parts that need to come together. And through the training, when you walk out with that credential, you're ready to put all those ingredients together and to put them in the oven. But what most guides don't know until they've been able to reflect back on this experience is that cake is baking for at least 3 years. And you're not taking it out of the oven and finding some of the sweetness for a while. I think of this for every single position in a community, that it's like baking the cake. You're pulling all the ingredients together, and it takes time to bake. It takes time to really unfold some of that deep foundational learning. And then we have more time. We need more time to savor the cake and to find out, well, what didn't work in this cake? I'm wondering what I need in a new recipe, and I'm going to try it again. And so it's this constant, scientific approach, imagine that, to understanding how to create the perfect cake. Personally, I don't think there is any perfect cake. There's lots of really yummy cakes out there, right? And I think that that's very appropriate in our field, that there's such diversity. So hold on to some of this idea of like, we're building ingredients, and we have to create a recipe for our staff and faculty that is dynamic enough that we can interchange, when we're running out of oil, that we can use, the applesauce, meaning that when this training did not meet all of the parts, that we're seeking more. That all making sense? Because I'm going to move forward. Seemi, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
So I love the cake analogy. And
Me too.
Take some work and then delicious.
So Katrina Schwartz said, every school leader wants a sustainable, effective way to help teachers improve. But finding that process is much more difficult than it sounds, because each teacher is an individual with specific strengths and weaknesses, and every teacher reacts to change differently. So as a former school administrator, I planned initially, I would plan for the full year of professional development for my entire staff. It wasn't super customized. I met the needs and the growth potential for multiple teachers, but certainly not everybody. And so I think this really resonated with me, that a certain amount of customization for a professional development plan is really appropriate, and it enriches your whole community. I think of us as teachers and as school leaders as that fulcrum, that pivotal point in which we create these incredible environments. For guides, it's for their students. And when we apply strategies and a plan for their growth, then we definitely have a greater chance of releasing their potential. Guides do this all the time with children. Our mission's really clear. But for school leaders, I'd like for you to put on that mindset for your staff and faculty, that when we apply certain strategies, we can help them be their best. And I think of that kind of the big picture is, why are we here? And that releasing of potential certainly has the ability to transform the world around us. It's what pulled me into Montessori, is this purpose. And I think in a macro and a very micro way in our communities, this is the big work that we're doing. So I want to keep a hold of these as we're thinking about like releasing people's potential, is that we're already in that field, right? So the next piece is why build a plan? And I think that there are some big buckets of why. And the first one is growth. I think about how when you apply a professional development plan, there can be both individual growth, but also systemic growth within your community. And without a plan, growth can be sporadic. Deneen, we were talking just a little bit before we started here about, you talked about cherry picking, this idea of finding, okay, that this is going to be the solution in our development in this moment for this problem. But without a plan, a bigger picture, are we really meeting the mission of our schools? Are we meeting that mission of releasing the potential of the adult, which will in turn release the potential of the child? Right? That big picture. So we need a plan, and we need some good resources. That your growth in a professional development plan can align with your overall school strategic plan. That meeting the mission and the vision usually requires this dynamic plan. Right? This idea of what we're forecasting of who we want to become. And when you create a professional development plan, that you can align it and it'll resonate and help you get to those missions. We also talked a little bit about community and how important our collegial community is to our growth. And I think a plan can really do so. That it can create transparency. We also were chatting before you were listening in about, is this a recruitment tool? I think that a professional development plan and having the clarity and transparency as an administrator in your hiring process can definitely be a great tool to bring in the right people, finding the right person to sit in the right seat on your bus, right? That this transparency creates this growth as a community. Reduces turnover for sure. I don't know about you, but I want to be in a community that sees my potential and that works with me to attain that. So I do think that, again, as a recruitment tool, I think it's a really positive tool.
Tammy, I'm just going to pause there.
Yeah.
So that's one of the issues that we see so often with schools is, they have these beautiful classrooms, beautiful programs, but they're really struggling to get quality staff in the door. And so your approach is that the staff you do have, you see, they feel heard, you help them develop so that they really don't ever want to leave. And of course, there are going to be instances where they do leave, job relocation for their spouse,
Yeah.
or something else, but
Yeah.
really the foundation of what you're offering at your school, it keeps, the staff there. They don't ever want to leave because it's a place that feels like home and a place that recognizes who they are individually and what they can give to the greater community. Is that right?
Absolutely, because as we grow as human beings, it seeps out in our professional life, and there's this growth plan, it seeps out into everything we do, that it affects our home lives. I was just presenting at a school 2 days ago and met somebody who had been in a course in the summer that I had given at the same school. And she came up and she said, you changed my life. And I got a little teary and I said, what do you mean? And she said, there's so many things that were in the assistant training program that I did live with you that affected how I was working with my husband at home and how I work with my children. And then it really started seeping out into my extended family relationships. And she said, it just really changed the way I see everything. That's what effective professional development can do. It can change lives. So when we customize it, we want what you just said. We don't want our people to feel like they want to leave. Instead, it's the opposite. We want them to feel like they never want to leave. And life gets in the way somehow. But I do agree with you. The reduction in turnover is a really key piece for me for providing accessible, affordable professional development.
Right. And it's essential now because there's a staff shortage. There absolutely is. And that's a key piece. If we can do it within our schools to make sure that who we do have, we honor and we develop and we help grow so that we don't end up in a situation where we have these beautiful classrooms and beautiful programs and beautiful community, but you can't fill the positions.
And I think that one of the patterns I'm seeing globally is that Montessori's growth has been exponential, but it means that we have all these newbies coming into the field, and it's so exciting. This, infusing our field with this new energy is really important, but we're lacking mentorship globally. There are not seasoned teachers out there that can really be supporting every single new teacher coming in because there's just not enough. And so the professional growth plan, I think, is absolutely essential for the kind of that meta look at the growth of Montessori and with fidelity to Montessori. This is complicated stuff, but at the same time, to build a plan is actually quite simple. So that's what we want to uncover a little bit more, is that it's not this huge onerous task that's going to take months of your time as an administrator. Let's make it as efficient as possible so that we can move forward together.
And I can imagine all the administrators out there are saying, yes, please.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
So if they're not yet, they're going to be, right? I'm always looking, and I know Seemi and I are really focused in on let's make this as practical as possible. We want to make sure that what we're providing is increasing performance in the classroom, that practitioners are feeling empowered to really put into action and implement the learning. And to do that, I really believe that they need to be part of the plan for themselves as practitioners. They need to have enough skin in the game in their own professional growth. And that's part of that performance piece. Yeah. And then, of course, I do believe that having a plan and that transparency unites a community as learners. I keep coming back to the core of what do we want for the children in our care? We want them to be curious about the world, and we're not training them for jobs. That's not the paradigm of Montessori education, but it is our paradigm that we're trying to nurture lifelong learners. And what better way than to create a community of lifelong learners and for it to be modeled constantly. That curiosity and excitement of trying something new and failing. Woohoo, that's how we learn. And I think that there's a mindset that comes into the community with really palpable professional development that's happening.
You know, and one thing too is if the parents and the families see that and feel that within your community, it's attractive, right? And it's magnetic.
Yeah.
And when you meet adult learners and they're excited to learn something new and to be connected to something, that's where I want my children to go.
Right.
Because I know that is translating in the classroom.
Right.
So this is a really good marketing tool as well. Marketing plug.
Absolutely. And we can talk a little bit more about how to make that a little bit more transparent. Like I had a box in my weekly newsletter going out to the community when I was the director of education for a large Montessori school in Washington State. And every time we had a professional development, there would be a teacher that would talk about it in this newsletter. They'd talk about like how it transformed them, like what were the takeaways. And it was a beautiful thing when we had a parent come and ask, so I'm interested in that sign language class that you guys were offering. Is there anything for parents? Because my child's doing these signs at home and I want to keep up. It's like uniting your community and lifelong learning.
Absolutely. That's a good tip.
I think so. It's really powerful. So here's a big question, like, well, let me back up. I'm going to back up just a moment because I really there's a couple more things. The plan is really not a tool for evaluating salaries. It's not a tool for evaluating performance. A plan is simply a plan. It's an idea of where you're going. It's a pathway. It is really about building these common goals as a community. And I'm going to break down a little bit, like, because there's mandatory learning and I bet that there's school leaders right now that are saying, there's no time, because it never feels like there's time, right? But this plan that is allowing us to kind of create a pathway can be both the mandatory pieces and how do you unfold that over the course of the year or at the beginning of the year? How do you front load professional development? When do you have to front load your professional development? And then what is the really meaningful professional development that is translated right back into the classroom? Because you have to have the blood-borne pathogens training, right? That's mandatory, but it doesn't help me in my interactions with the children. And so I want to ensure that I've got both going. I don't know if that was a little more convoluted, but I think that when you're offering as a school leader both the prescribed topics and staff-driven subjects with coaching and resources to implement, that individual and systemic growth is more possible.
Yeah, and Tammy, I see this more of like two buckets, right? You've got training that is necessary, which also includes your Montessori training, right? This is the qualification to do your job.
For your role, yes.
Right. And then there's development. And I see those as two separate things because development is really what you're speaking to is, you know, that natural growth, that increasing our connection to why we're doing this in the first place. That's development.
That's right. That's right. And that's a great segue, Deneen, right into who needs a plan, because it's not just your teachers. It's not your trained teachers. It really is, honestly, just about everybody in your community. I think about your staff and faculty, that administrators need a professional development plan. That if you yourself well, you're here, so clearly you value professional development for yourself. But does your front office manager have a professional development plan to help them be their best at what they do? Does your admissions person, do they have a plan to help them be better, to help with the retention, to help with like gaining those first impressions in the tour and all those parts that I think about? Your lead guides definitely need a plan. That Montessori training is initial. I was just chatting yesterday with one of our very close friends who did her training and didn't have any art, specifically intentional training in art to bring into the 3 to 6 classroom. And I was like, what? Because I had great training in art. I'm like, what? And we talked about how they've had to move out into the greater world to gain that, to bring it into the classroom, but that they couldn't do it within the first year that they were in the classroom. It had to be planned out and over time, and that they're still on this path to increase their art instruction. If that makes sense. Our assistants, I am an avid advocate for all of our support staff, that we don't necessarily provide initial training for them, let alone the professional development. So I'm a big advocate of providing initial training for their role specifically, because it's out there. There's lots of live training out there, and then Seemi and I provide some online training as well. But the professional development for your assistant staff is often in the realm of effective child guidance and that inner work that Dr. Montessori talks so much about, that is essential for any adult working with children.
And I oftentimes I see the structure where guides are given the task of training the assistant. So what are your thoughts on that, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't think guides are firstly equipped. I don't think that they are trained to train adults, that they are doing it on the fly, and they give great mentorship, which is an essential piece. They can provide experience for support staff, but without that initial training, they don't have the time. They don't have the time to convey Montessori philosophy. They don't have time to convey some really important nuggets of information about child development, about child guidance. It's more on the fly and reactionary rather than very intentionally laid out. So I've seen this. In part, I think that the lack of training for support staff has led to a very high turnover. And I feel like that these are the unsung heroes that make the smooth running of the classroom happen. And if we don't pay attention to their initial training, we devalue that role. So, yeah.
I mean, they could also be your next guide. Like what a perfect position to be able to really nurture that individual into a potential guide position in the future.
Absolutely. Growing your own is one of the very best ways to grow your faculty, is to, and that's how I came into Montessori. I started out as an assistant. I was a nanny to a little boy who went to a Montessori school on Bainbridge Island in Washington State. Yay, Montessori Country School, just putting out a shout out there, that they gave me the chance to be an assistant as a young adult. And I was hooked. Like, I had such an amazing mentor teacher who did send me to a one-day training that whet my appetite. I went right into my credential course, just a year later, that it was that important to me that I continue to do so. One of the reasons I actually developed the initial assistance training course and then taught it live for 7 years is because of this turnover problem, is that we were losing so many great people because they felt lost in their role, or they felt devalued, or they weren't as effective, and then they felt that. They That's how they started seeing themselves, was ineffective. And that's a cycle we can break right at the beginning to by amplifying their gifts. And here's one of the great things is that within that 7 years, we were having almost half of our assistants coming back to do the 3 to 6 training.
Beautiful.
It is. It's a beautiful thing. So I do think that we sometimes forget about some of the other support staff in our community for initial training in our Montessori communities. We acclimate them, but it's not necessarily a path for their professional growth. So I think about our substitutes, our curriculum specialists. I think about our maintenance people. I was in Boise a couple months ago supporting a school and for an in-service, a 2-day in-service on cultivating our practice and our spirit. And they brought their maintenance people into the 2-day in-service. And it's the first time I had experienced that. And I can tell you, it was so valuable. I had feedback from the maintenance people that were saying, we had no idea. We've been interacting with the children in these ways and didn't know that that was countering what was happening elsewhere. We didn't know that when we're talking about a prepared environment, yeah, we keep it clean, but we didn't know why. So it's those hooks that I think, again, unite a community and provide this incredible sense of value as a human being that I'm contributing to this community the very best way I can. So I'm an advocate for everybody.
Absolutely. The word that comes to mind is purpose for me. And that's such a key thing going on right now. I'm sure you guys have probably heard about Brene Brown, who I'm a huge fan of lately.
Me too.
She speaks directly to this. Right?
Yeah.
Like we are all seeking for purpose and connection.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe our position at your school isn't our lifelong career, but
Right.
we will always seek purpose and connection regardless of the status of our position, right? And so if we can tap into every single staff, and we love that you have maintenance on here, because it's just that's the community feel that we're all looking for, and most of us are lacking because of just the way our world is set up right now.
Right. I think that I'm going to quote Brene Brown here, because one of the pieces here, one of my favorite things that she says, is so simple. It's that to be clear is to be kind. To be unclear is to be unkind. And so when we talk about this professional development plan, there's a lot of transparency. It's really clear. And there's nobody guessing about where their position is in a community or that purpose, because it's really clear. So I think that this is an area that can truly unite a community so seamlessly. And even though people might have your maintenance person is going to likely have a very different plan that looks different than maybe your lead guides. However, I think it's a really important piece. I advocate even for that we have board members create their own plan, or a board collectively look at how do they build their own professional development as a board. Because I think that's a missing piece oftentimes, is that we're not looking at the board. Yeah.
I like
that. Look at that. Board members.
There it is. Love it.
Yeah. Come on, let's move forward. So kind of coming into what are the subjects, what are the topics that you plan? And Dr. Montessori said, it is not enough for the teacher to love the child. She must first love and understand the universe. She must prepare herself and truly work at it. So this piece about understanding the universe, again, I think that this can really guide us in building what subject matter that we know, being in the classroom, the children absorb everything that we are. And so we have to work on ourselves constantly. And as school administrators, our our faculty, our staff, our parents, they really read who we are. And so this idea of loving and understanding the universe and creating this pathway for growth will seep out elsewhere. And I think that there are some big buckets. There's some mandatory pieces here we have to do. I come from the Pacific Northwest. I know that Seemi's in North Carolina, and you're in Minnesota, Tammy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So our states have different regulations, right, that are mandatory. But generally, I think about best practices. What is mandatory for a community? And here's some thoughts I have. I think mandatory training can be, I think, anti-bias and anti-racism, ABAR training is actually should be mandatory in every community because we have implicit biases that we all have. And so that's something that's absorbed by our children. It's perceived by parents. I think this is actually something that needs to rise up in your mandatory topics. That's my pitch right there.
And there are a lot of
we can give you some
Montessorians talking on this topic and presenting on this topic. So it's a big push right now, and there's so many resources for you for training. So I love that this is on the mandatory list, and it's tough because it's there. The resources are there, and the incredible importance and need for it is in existence right now.
Absolutely. And it's not on this list, and it might be on my next list, but I do think that this is closely tied with trauma-informed practice that I think is becoming very clear that we need to be paying more attention to as well, because it touches all different aspects of who we are as human beings, as well as what our children are absorbing. CPR first aid training, bloodborne pathogens, nutrition and safety, food handling, positive discipline or respectful child guidance in some way, I think is a key piece that people don't necessarily see as mandatory. But I can tell you there's very few Montessori training programs that have much other than using respect. That when you get in the classroom, it's like, and so this one I think is really important. Inclusion and special needs, illness and injury procedures, sanitation procedures for cleaning, professionalism. Like, what does professionalism look like? These are all arenas that are often in-house. And go ahead.
Would you add also parent communication?
Oh, I love that one. Definitely as mandatory for sure. I feel like some of that falls under the professionalism umbrella. Like, how do we want to be perceived by each other, including our clients?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. Dr. Montessori also said that the training of the teacher is to help life, is something far more than learning of ideas. It includes the training of character. It is a preparation of the spirit. And this is where I feel like we're really looking at customizing a plan for every staff member, and that it's collaborated upon. I worked in 3 to 6 for many, many years in a school that was trilingual. We had English and Spanish with ASL, American Sign Language, as the bridge between the two. And I speak English. That was it. My assistant spoke Spanish only in the classroom. We both had to learn sign language. And so customizing that for my professional development was really important, not only for my role, but for me to feel like spiritually that I was able to contribute to the children and to the community. And here's some more ideas. So language-based training, I think, is a really great thing for people to take a look at. Arts-based, you have teachers that want to learn an instrument so they can bring it into the classroom? I just met a teacher just a couple of days ago that did a full week session on the bells. She said it changed everything. It changed and she was a music major in college. And she had no idea about the gifts of the bells. That was professional development. That is not included in most of our training, to have a full week with an expert guiding you. It changed her for sure. STEM-based ideas, like updating the biology in your botany. Oh my goodness, that's really important. This school I'm working with right now wants to create a maker space in their elementary program. Awesome. That's going to really amplify practical life and integrate their curriculum in this new way. So exciting. Montessori based professional development, such as refresher courses. And I know that the tradition in AMI is really clear for refreshers, and there's not any other affiliations that I know of that have that built in. And so taking a look at how do we refresh core curriculum areas. Nature-based, such as bringing in a master gardener to work with staff and or getting a master gardener certification, looking at risk-based play. These are all just ideas I came up with and like, okay, what do I want to do? Like, so you're going to have staff people that are going to come in and have really specific ideas on their own professional growth, and building that in, I think, is a really important part.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, connecting this back to the classroom and really the importance of allowing this to organically evolve, right? Like to evolve in the way that the individual is offering what they have. It translates so well to the classroom because children now get to see, which is it's a principle of Montessori, right? Like we are the knower of general things, right? We're not experts on everything, but we are interested in everything. And I think, once we can really start to show the children that we're learning more about what we can offer you, then that's inspiring them too. Not everybody is an artist, but you can still have the principles in art and appreciate that and refresh that in your classroom. And it's just such a beautiful plan,
I think it is. And I think about a community, you might have a very small faculty and staff, and that I think this is still at play. You can collectively come together and say, where do we want to grow? Like the makerspace one, that's going to be a collection of people that are dedicating themselves to this professional development to bring it back into their community. But it's not everybody, because they also have another strand of people that are really committed to expanding their gardens. And so they need to build their repertoire of understanding on how to do that well with best practices. And so you can, again, kind of align with your broader mission, but also what is your strategic plan for your community? And having people kind of come in because they're interested, because it's a choice, that's really, because they see a greater purpose. Those are key principles for optimal learning, that bringing in choice for the adults is a really important part. It's a buy-in, and we get to see this unfold in our communities, and it's so purposeful. So, and it snowballs in a really good way, because then people start saying, like I can learn Spanish through my job. What? That's so cool, and that'll make me I'll have so much more to offer my community, but it's also feeding my spirit in this way too. So I think all these are connected.
And the act of customizing, is growth in itself, I think, because it takes reflection and analysis and, deeply looking at what are your needs and what are the needs of your environment, your community, just you as yourself as any of the members of your staff. You are, this self-awareness and self-reflection is, the path to growth.
Right. Another thing I think of too is which I think we're all kind of guilty of, is, we love these things. We're super excited. We get the understanding intellectually, but the practical application, and I'm not sure, Tammy, if you're going to tap into that during this presentation.
It's next.
Awesome. Yay. Okay, I'm going to stop. But that's a key one, right? We can get so excited and then we go back to our daily lives, right? And then it's, how do we actually implement it?
Right. And effective training and professional development will be designed so that you can have high transference of this learning. But there has to be a culture that is prepared for that, right? That I think, let's get really specific. Let's get really practical, because, what are the steps for planning? Here's some steps that we're going to recommend. The first one is that administrators create a file for every staff member to track professional development. It seems really simple, but I do enter schools where it's broad and it's not really specific for each person. So you might have one for your teachers or your faculty right now, but what about your other staff members? So creating this pathway, this starts with something very simple. I'm a big fan of looking at supporting financially a certain amount of professional development for our staff, both the mandatory as well as some customization. Now, I'm also a believer that the professional growth is something that benefits every staff member. And so having a little skin in the game financially is also okay for certain things. I helped pay for some of my own professional development, and I was also supported by my school. So every school is going to have a different set of parameters, but these are some things to think about in your steps. Meeting with every staff member, like having some time for them to think about, to reflect, as Seemi said, to analyze, for you to have a conversation that reveals some of your own ideas for where the vision of the school is going, or their classroom, or where they are, and pulling from them, but planting these seeds for where is it that they see that they want to grow. And you guys can stop me at any time to interject.
Great.
I think that your mandatory training needs to be identified, needs to be scheduled, your trainers need to be booked, attendance needs to be tracked. And then more so, I think that there needs to be a follow-up with your staff members. That oftentimes we do the training, the mandatory training, and then there's nothing that kind of follows up from it. It's just kind of out there, and there's an expectation that people are following up on it. But I like to kind of bring it right back and say, talk to me about how this anti-bias training has affected some of the actions, and where can I be of support to you in your path? Did you create a goal for your anti-bias? Let's talk about where it's going. Where do you need some tools? Do you need, what do you need from me as your administrator to help you be your best to be able to implement some of the pieces from this training? If we don't have that, then there's not maybe a drive to put it into action, because it's hard. Learning is hard sometimes, and it's really hard to make it really practical. That you're identifying topics of interest, you're scheduling these ideas, whether it's bringing in a professional development, doing it online, sending your people out to the community college. It's where I got to do my Spanish classes and my ASL. What does that look like? What is the schedule? And having your staff people contribute and be a part of this plan, that this is a dynamic plan. Things change. So we want to make sure that there's enough space for that adaptation.
Right. And if you have your staff members out in the community, that's more exposure, right? Well, they represent you. And if people in the room, like the community college, I mean, how amazing to know that there's a Montessorian in that class, and your school sent them there. I mean, that right there is a really nice marketing tool.
It really is. And I think about this is where some of that initial training comes in for support staff, is because one of the exercises we do is in a nutshell, can you tell somebody in that elevator that you're in who says, what do you do? And you say, I work at a Montessori school. And they're like, what's that? Because they are now an ambassador, not just for Montessori, but for your school. So are your staff equipped to be able to talk about that in an eloquent, concise way that is representative, that's fair? So I love that it is a marketing tool.
Right. And that they're excited about where they work. I mean, that's a key piece.
Okay, so we were just finishing up on the topics of interest based on the needs of the individual as well as the community, and this as part of building this plan. I'd also like to put out there that oftentimes we don't know what we need, that sometimes we don't know what opportunities are out there that might spur something that is so exciting. I didn't know that I wanted to bring engineering into my upper elementary class until I saw it as one of the options at a conference. And then I'm like, that sounds interesting. I'm going to dip my toe into that a little bit. And my dad's an engineer, so I've pushed back on it my whole life because I'm a little bit of a rebel. And after taking the course, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to learn more. I want to leap in. So providing opportunities for your faculty means that you need to post it and get it out to them. And there's lots of ways to do that. The simplest way is if you have a faculty room, make sure that you have a bulletin board and you're keeping this really active and that you're bringing it up. I know communities that have an intra-web where they're connecting with their faculty and staff in many ways, and they post opportunities all the time. But I think that, again, you don't know you're thirsty until somebody hands you that water. You really do need to take a look at how do we make these opportunities transparent. Okay, let's see. I also think that I'm not a big fan of policies, but I do think sometimes having a staff policy really clear about an expectation for professional development, that it's not just the mandatory parts, but that as a Montessori community, here we are in the business of lifelong learning and being curious about the world. And therefore, part of our culture is going to be that we are going to help you pursue your own path here. So sometimes that can be helpful in some communities. Okay. I do think checking in, a mid-year check is a very minimum to readjust the plan, to take a look at how is this unfolding? Is this working for you? Getting what you need? Has something popped up in our community that we need to bring in somebody that we can find you the right effective child guidance workshop in this moment of time? These things are going to pop up. It is dynamic. A plan is just that, a plan. So I'm going to jump right into resources unless there's anything you want to add to those steps to planning.
No, I think that's good. That's pretty
good. Okay, I'm going to keep moving then. Here's some resources. The very first one is Nido Marketing. I was checking out your website. Oh my goodness, this is so awesome that there's so much out there for school leaders, for administrators, for office staff that will enrich your life. I think Nido's great. I'm going to promote shamelessly Trillium, because I think Trillium curates really effective training for so many different parties that are in a community. We also provide some as well at ClassrooMechanics, Center for Guided Montessori Studies, CGMS, offers some really great stuff too. The Child Care Education Institute also offers some really hands-on, great professional development resources. There's so many out there that we could spend hours talking about that alone. But here, this will get you started. AMS, American Montessori Society, also is highly committed to professional development, and they are offering many, many webinars as well. Oh, and I've already got the thank you, but I'm wondering if there's any other resources that either of you would add to that list before we need to wrap up.
Well,
oh, go ahead.
Well, Tammy, you and I are doing something next week that that we'd love to invite anybody. If you're watching this before the deadline, Tammy's doing a free webinar next week on child guidance and 5 steps to redirecting children. That would be fantastic for anybody who works at the 3 to 6 level, lead teacher, assistant teachers, special, anybody who comes in. We'd love to have you. The simplest URL for that, I don't know if you can hop in there and add it somewhere. Tammy, make a new slide quickly, is trilliummontessori.org/P2P. And over there, you'll see a link to the webinar sign up.
Yeah, Seemi, and if you could send that to me in an email, I'll share that in our group as well, in our emails too. Because what's the actual date for that, just in case people are watching this recording and it's months from now?
Sure. So the free webinar, we have a bunch of different sessions to choose from. So it's January 12th to the 16th, and I think there's 4 sessions per day. It's going to be recorded, so you'll be watching a recording, but you can choose those time slots, and you will have a free replay available until January 20th. So even if you cannot make it to a specific time, you still have time to watch it. And then Tammy, do you want to talk a little bit more about why we're doing that webinar and what P2P actually is?
Yeah, sure. So P2P is principles to practice. This kind of comes back to this idea that we don't have enough mentorship out there, and we really want to make resources available and accessible to teachers in the classroom and to their assistants and to all those administrators and other support staff who are also supporting them, to really amplify and improve the interactions in the classroom, so the management of the classroom. So Principles to Practice is really providing tools to practice based on high fidelity Montessori principles. And this webinar is just this much of what's coming, because we are launching during this webinar membership program at a really affordable price that people will be able to get an hour of professional development a month that is very specifically practice or tools that they get to practice in the classroom that will make their lives so much easier, because we're pulling in other experts and people that are seasoned Montessorians to help them with their classroom management problems. So we're providing solutions. Did I even explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited. I want to join.
Okay, that's good.
Well, and I think one of the things that a lot of schools struggle with, and this was really, really important to us, was accessibility. And we can't make, there's a lot of aspects to accessibility and we can't cover all of it, but one of the things we did definitely want to address was affordability and making it accessible to people who don't generally, can't really go out there and get quality professional development with experts like Tammy. So I'm going to tell you the price for it, so you don't have to hunt around for it. It's just $5 a month per person for a 1 hour of classroom management content. And so we'll be talking about all of the different, why are the children being silly? How do I get them to be motivated? How do I get them to concentrate? All of those questions that your teachers are asking and wondering about, we will be talking about all of that. And yeah, so we hope you will at least join us for the free webinar. That would be great. And then if that seems to be up your alley, then we would love to have you inside the P2P membership as well.
And we promise we won't waste your time. We like to have fun because learning is better if it's fun.
Right. So do you offer any live coaching, or is that in the plans?
Yeah.
Yeah?
ClassrooMechanics does. I'm currently in Tennessee for that very reason.
Awesome. Because I can imagine that would be really helpful too, right? If
Absolutely. Bringing in an outside expert in any realm can help stretch your community, and especially for school leaders, that it really oftentimes needs to be really customized. I do a lot of listening and reflecting as a coach, and then I build workshops for faculty and staff based on the needs specifically for that community. And the concept's still the same, that this is why Seemi and I partner on so many things, is that it needs to be accessible, but it also needs, and accessible in that emotional way too, that we were chatting about earlier, is that people need to be prepared to build on where they are and stretch them to where they want to go. And oftentimes that needs to be very carefully crafted for that community. So I spend a lot of time supporting schools.
And you're headed out of the country soon, right?
Yeah, so let's see. I'm nomadic, which didn't come up, but I haven't had a home for about 5.5 years, and I travel constantly. So I'm here in Tennessee currently. I head to Boston for the big Boston conference this weekend, and then I fly to Nigeria on Sunday for a week as a MACD verifier. So it's a different hat I wear. And then I have a 2-month speaking tour of Namibia and South Africa coming up this spring. So I'm really excited to work with schools in Southern Africa.
So on any given week, Tammy is probably 2 different states. And then any given month, different country.
We tabs on you, Tammy, because we have members all over the world. So
that's wonderful.
It's like find Tammy now, right? You should have like
a
website that shows us where you're at.
Often the first question we have for each other is, what time zone am I in? And sometimes I have to ask Seemi, what's the time difference? What time is it where you are? Because I'm not sure.
Oh, I love it. Well, Tammy and Seemi, thank you so much for such amazing information and such a value for our members. We're so thankful to have you speak to this really important topic. And as administrators, we know how important it is, but we have so many million other things that we do, and oftentimes this can be pushed to the side. So I think that you have brought this topic to light again and really made it such an important piece of our school cultures, because that's what we really want. Is we want our Montessori schools to be places where people are coming and magnetized to it and don't ever want to leave. And that includes families, children, and our staff.
Thank you, Deneen, for inviting us and allowing us to share some of our passion with the community. I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you.
For sure. And thank you, Seemi.
Thank you for the invitation, Deneen, and thank you, Tammy, for the presentation.
Thank you, Seemi.